7 quiet habits that can steal your happiness as you age, and how to get them back. Have you ever met someone who seemed to grow brighter with age? The kind of person whose eyes still sparkle, whose laugh fills the room, and who somehow seems more alive with every passing year? They radiate warmth, attract people without even trying, and make you feel like the most important person in the world when you're with them. And then, there's the other kind. Someone who was once lively and full of life, but now seems to be slowly fading, withdrawing from friends, speaking less, smiling less. You can almost see the loneliness settling over them like dust on a forgotten shelf. It's heartbreaking, and it can happen to any of us. Here's the surprising truth. It's rarely about money, health, or even luck. More often, it's about habits, tiny, almost invisible ones, that slowly push people away and chip away at joy without us even realizing it's happening. In today's video, we're going to uncover 7 of these sneaky habits that quietly erode happiness and connection as we age. And more importantly, the gentle, practical shifts that can turn it all around. These aren't theories from a book. They're lessons gathered from heart-to-heart talks with elders, real-life stories, and a bit of soul-searching. And I have to warn you, number 5 is so subtle that most people don't notice it until it's already cost them their closest relationships. 1. Letting complaints take the driver's seat. Let me introduce you to Harold. For decades, he was the life of every gathering. A retired music teacher with a treasure chest of choir stories. The kind of man who could turn even a simple trip to the grocery store into a comedy worth telling. But over time, something shifted. His stories started to sound different. The humor was still there, but it came wrapped in a sharper edge. Instead of telling about the joy of a concert, he would talk about how people don't appreciate music like they used to. Instead of marveling at a new restaurant, he'd complain about how expensive everything's gotten. The news was always bad. People had no manners anymore. The tone of his conversations became less about connection and more about correction. He didn't notice it happening, but little by little, his calls with friends grew shorter. His once bubbly lunch dates were replaced with polite excuses. Even his grandkids, who used to beg to hear his stories, started texting, "I'm busy," instead of visiting. And here's the painful truth. No matter how much we care about someone, if we consistently leave their company feeling heavier than when we arrived, we'll slowly start to keep our distance. The real danger is that this habit rarely feels like complaining to the person doing it. To Harold, he was just telling the truth. But in reality, his conversations had shifted from sharing joy to pointing out flaws, and it was pushing people away. Gentle fix. Try this experiment. For 1 week, open every conversation with something light, hopeful, or curious, before anything else. It can be as simple as, "You won't believe the sunrise I saw this morning," or "Guess what I learned about bees today?" It doesn't mean you can't share frustrations. You can, but limit how much airtime they get. Let curiosity lead, not criticism. Because while complaints close doors, curiosity has a way of opening them wide. 2. Forgetting the little rituals of self-care. Millie had always been the kind of woman who made life feel a little brighter just by walking into a room. Her style wasn't about trends. It was about expression. A silk scarf knotted just so. Earrings that danced when she laughed. A spritz of rose perfume that lingered in the air like a memory. Even in her 70s, she carried herself with quiet elegance. It wasn't vanity. It was her way of saying, "I'm still here. I'm still me." But over the years, those little rituals began to fade. The scarves stayed folded in a drawer. The earrings gathered dust. She started wearing only the same 2 faded cardigans and letting her hair go unbrushed some mornings. The perfume bottle sat untouched on her dresser, the liquid inside slowly evaporating. One day I asked her why. She smiled faintly and said, "Oh, who's looking at me now?" The answer, of course, was her. Every morning when she caught her reflection in the mirror, every time she passed a shop window, every time she lowered her head because she didn't feel like she looked nice enough to meet someone's eyes, and with each skipped scarf, Each "it doesn't matter," she was sending herself the quiet message. I matter a little less today. The truth is, those small acts of self-care aren't really about what other people see. They're about how we tell ourselves we're still worth showing up for, even if the only witness is us. I've met people in their 80s and 90s who still polish their shoes, iron their shirts, or put on a bit of lipstick before breakfast. Not because anyone else expects it, but because it reminds them they're alive, engaged, and worthy of beauty. Gentle fix. Choose one small, loving ritual each day, even if no one else will notice. Brush your hair, put on a fresh shirt, wear a ring you love, dab on that perfume you've been saving for special occasions. Because here's the truth, today is the special occasion. Third, guarding against change. Like it's the enemy, Ellen had a rule, and she said it often: no smartphones, no social media, no modern nonsense. It wasn't that she disliked people. She loved her family dearly, but she saw all the new gadgets and trends as distractions, even threats, to the way life should be. So she kept her old flip phone, mailed handwritten letters, and turned down every offer to just try something new. Then one Christmas, her grandson came over with a gift she didn't want, a shiny new smartphone. She laughed and told him she'd never use it, but he grinned and said, "Just give me 10 minutes to show you one thing." He showed her how to send a text. She frowned at first, pecking each letter slowly, grumbling about tiny keys. But later that night, her phone buzzed. It was a photo from her grandson, him holding up a plate of cookies with the caption, "Just like yours, Grandma." She smiled. The next day, another buzz, a video of her great-granddaughter taking her first steps. Then a group chat where her children and grandchildren swapped jokes, dinner plans, and little thinking of you messages. Ellen's world, which had been shrinking without her noticing, suddenly opened up. Not because she loved technology, but because she'd learned to speak the language her family was living in. Here's the thing, when we treat change as an enemy, we're not just avoiding gadgets or new trends. We're unintentionally avoiding people. Every time we refuse to learn something new, we quietly put up a wall between us and those who've already stepped into that new space. Gentle fix. The next time someone offers to teach you something, even something that feels silly, unnecessary, or too modern, say yes. You don't have to love it. You don't even have to keep it forever. But trying it says, I want to stay connected to you. And that message is worth more than any device. 4. Holding on to too much. In the house and in the heart, Marie's home was full. Not just cozy full, but overflowing. Shelves sagged under the weight of trinkets. Every drawer was crammed, and the garage was stacked with boxes she hadn't opened in decades. On the surface, it was just stuff. But if you look closer, each object carried a story. A vase from her wedding shower in 1968, a sweater her late husband once wore, a stack of birthday cards from friends who'd long since passed away. When I asked why she kept so much, she said, "These things are my memories. If I let them go, I'm letting go of the people and moments too." What Marie didn't realize was that her heart was just as cluttered as her home. She still replayed old arguments in her mind, things said in anger 30 years ago. She still carried guilt over choices she'd made in her youth. She still held little pockets of resentment, the way you hold on to a chipped mug because you're used to it. But here's the truth. The more we hold on to, the less space we have for what's new. Whether it's a hallway crowded with furniture or a heart crowded with old hurts, there comes a point where the weight stops us from moving forward. And the cost isn't just physical space, it's emotional freedom. Every time we cling to what no longer serves us, we unintentionally keep ourselves anchored to the past instead of sailing toward what's ahead. Gentle fix. Don't think of it as getting rid. Think of it as making room. Start small, one drawer, one old letter, one resentment you've been carrying. Ask yourself, does this still add beauty or meaning to my life? If not, let it go. And trust that memories live inside you, not inside objects. Because every time you release something you no longer need, Whether it's a chipped teacup or a decades-old grudge, you create space for joy to move in. 5. Losing patience. Faster. Frank used to be the definition of easygoing. If a store clerk made a mistake, he'd chuckle and say, "We all have our off days." If a neighbor's dog barked too much, he'd bring over biscuits instead of complaints. But lately, something had changed. Every small delay, every little noise, every difference of opinion seemed to set him off. When the cashier took too long, he sighed loudly. When the TV remote didn't work, he swore under his breath. When his daughter shared an idea he didn't agree with, he cut her off mid-sentence. It wasn't that Frank had become a bad person, far from it, but stress, aches, loneliness, and even a shrinking social circle had made his world feel smaller and less flexible. And in a smaller world, every little inconvenience feels bigger. Here's the quiet danger. Impatience doesn't just make life harder for us. It changes how people feel around us. Frank's grandson stopped asking him for help with homework because Grandpa gets mad if I don't get it right the first time. His neighbors waved from a distance instead of stopping to chat. Even his best friend started saying, "You seem tense lately." Most of the time, we don't realize how quickly impatience can creep in. It's like a slow leak in a tire. You don't notice until the ride feels bumpier, and by then, damage is already done to the relationships we value most. Gentle fix. Before reacting, give yourself a 5-second pause. Take one deep breath. Remind yourself, this moment will pass. This person matters more than this problem. And here's a bonus trick. Look for humor instead of heat. When the remote won't work, make a joke about it. When traffic's slow, put on your favorite song. Because patience isn't just a kindness to others, it's a gift to yourself. It turns everyday frustrations into moments of grace. And moments of grace are what people remember about us. 6. Letting friendships fade. When Tom retired, he thought he'd finally have all the time in the world for his friends. No more rushing between work and home. No more "we'll catch up soon" texts that never turned into plans. And for a while, he did see people. Coffee dates here, a fishing trip there. But little by little, life got in the way. One friend moved closer to their grandkids. Another started caring for a sick spouse. A few just stopped calling. Tom meant to reach out, but there was always tomorrow. And then tomorrow became next week, then next month. And before he knew it, he couldn't remember the last time he'd spoken to some of his closest friends. Here's the thing. Friendships rarely end with a fight. More often, they fade quietly. Not because we stop caring, but because we stop tending to them. It's like a garden. Without water, without sunlight, without a little attention, the plants don't die overnight, they just slowly wither. Tom didn't realize how much he missed his friends until he stumbled on an old photo. Him and Dave standing by the lake, holding up their biggest catch of the day. He stared at it for a long time, thinking, when did we stop doing that? By the time he finally called Dave, it had been nearly 2 years. The conversation was warm, but something had shifted. The easy rhythm they once had was harder to find. Gentle fix. Don't wait for the perfect time to reconnect. It rarely comes. Pick one friend today. Send a message, even if it's just, "Saw something that reminded me of you." Schedule a quick call, even if it's only 15 minutes. Friendship isn't about grand gestures. It's about the small, regular touches that say, "You still matter to me." Because the truth is, the older we get, the more we realize. The greatest treasures we'll ever have aren't things. They're the people we've walked beside, and it's worth the effort to keep walking together. 7. Closing yourself off to new stories. Eleanor had always been curious, a lifelong reader, traveler, and listener of stories. Even in her 80s, she could light up a room with a tale about a stranger she'd met on a train, or a book that had changed her perspective. But over time, a quiet habit crept in. She started saying, "I've seen it all," or "That's not for me anymore." Invitations went unanswered, new hobbies were declined, and conversations with younger relatives felt more like lectures than exchanges. At first it seemed harmless, a simple choice to rest, to stick with what's familiar. But slowly Eleanor's world shrank. Life became predictable. Her mind, once a playground of curiosity, felt smaller. She wasn't just missing new experiences. She was missing the stories of others, the sparks of inspiration, the laughter that comes from learning something surprising. Here's the subtle danger. When we stop opening ourselves to new stories, we stop growing. We risk becoming spectators in our own lives, watching the world move forward without us. And the irony is, the more isolated we feel, the harder it becomes to take that first step into something unfamiliar. Gentle fix. Seek out one new story, one new perspective every day. Ask a grandchild about their favorite song. Read a book from a genre you've never tried. Attend a small local event or listen to a podcast that challenges your assumptions. Even a tiny spark of curiosity can rekindle a sense of wonder. Each story you embrace is a reminder. Life is still unfolding, and there's always room for growth, connection, and delight, no matter your age. Because the greatest wisdom, Eleanor realized, isn't just about looking back. It's about staying open enough to keep learning, laughing, and living, to keep your heart and mind wide open, even when the years are many. Conclusion. As we've seen today, the way we age, the joy, the closeness, the warmth we carry with us, isn't determined by luck, health, or money. It's shaped by the small, often invisible habits we choose every single day. The way we speak, the care we give ourselves, the curiosity we nurture, and the love we share with others. Each of these 7 habits we explored, from letting complaints dominate conversations to closing ourselves off to new stories, quietly influence the lives around us, as well as the life we see reflected in the mirror. And the beautiful truth is, the tiniest shifts can ripple outward, reigniting connection, joy, and wonder in ways we often can't imagine. So today, take a moment to ask yourself, what small habit could I nurture right now that would bring a little more warmth into my life and into the lives of those I love? Because even a single gentle change, repeated day by day, can create a life that feels richer, brighter, and more deeply connected. If you felt inspired by these lessons, stories, and reflections, make sure to subscribe to Echoes of Elderly Wisdom. Here we celebrate the lessons that time teaches, the warmth that comes with experience, and the small practices that make life fuller, kinder, and more joyful at any age. And remember, it's never too late to start. Even the tiniest act of care, curiosity, or connection can light up your world and everyone around you.